You've been told that if you want something, you have to chase it, hustle harder, push more, hold tighter. But if that were true, why does chasing leave you exhausted, anxious, and still empty-handed? Why does grasping make what you want slip even further away, like sand falling through your fingers? The truth is, not everything is meant to be forced. What is truly yours does not need you to beg, fight, or suffer for it. It comes when the time is right, quietly, naturally, like a flower blooming without struggle. Buddhist teachings have whispered this truth for centuries, that peace comes not from control, but from letting go, from trusting life's flow instead of wrestling against it, from learning that attachment is the root of suffering, and detachment, the gentle art of release, is the doorway to freedom. Tonight, as you listen, you'll feel something shift. The restlessness inside you will begin to soften. The grip of fear, of what if, of endless wanting, will start to loosen. And in its place, a calm space will open. A space where trust can grow, where you can finally breathe again. This is not about giving up, it's about waking up. It's about realizing that what is meant for you will arrive in its own time, and what isn't was never yours to carry. So, are you ready to set down the weight? Are you ready to let life unfold without force? Then let's begin. When the truth of letting life flow naturally begins to settle in your heart, a new question quietly rises. How do you actually live this teaching without becoming cold, distant, or careless? Many people hear the word detachment and mistake it for not caring, as if freedom means shutting your heart off from the world. This confusion is dangerous because what looks like peace on the outside can easily become numbness inside. The path of Buddhism is not about turning into stone, it is about becoming light. And that is why understanding the fine line between detachment and indifference is one of the most important lessons for spiritual growth. Detachment is the soft opening of the hand that once clenched tightly. It is the ability to hold life gently, to appreciate without clinging, to release without bitterness. Indifference, on the other hand, is the refusal to hold anything at all, the closing of the hand before life even touches it. One arises from wisdom, the other from fear. One expands the heart, the other shrinks it. This subtle difference determines whether your path leads to freedom or to a prison disguised as freedom. When you are detached, you still care deeply. You love, but without trying to possess. You support, but without needing recognition. You listen, but without seeking control. This state allows compassion to flow freely because you are no longer driven by ego. Indifference blocks that flow because it tells you that nothing matters, that the suffering of others is not your concern, that love is optional. A detached person sees pain and responds with kindness, while an indifferent person sees pain and looks away. This is why confusing the two is so dangerous. Indifference wears the mask of detachment, but underneath, it is emptiness without depth. The Buddha warned against craving, but he never told us to stop caring. He spoke about the middle way, a path that avoids both extreme attachment and extreme rejection. Detachment is born in this middle ground. You can look at someone you love and let them be free, knowing that love is not ownership. You can face loss with tears in your eyes, yet with peace in your heart, because you do not resist impermanence. Indifference would tell you to shut off those tears, to bury your feelings, to pretend you are untouched. But repressing emotion does not bring freedom, it builds walls. Many people choose indifference because it feels easier. If you care less, you hurt less, or so it seems. But this false comfort comes at a cost. You cut yourself off not only from pain, but also from joy. You may think you are safe, but in truth, you are empty. Detachment asks for courage because it requires you to feel everything fully while still letting go. It asks you to open your heart wide, even knowing that one day what you love will change or disappear. That courage transforms suffering into wisdom, while indifference leaves you stuck in quiet despair. Psychologists today speak about emotional suppression and its effects on the body. When you push down your feelings, your nervous system carries the weight. Stress rises, anxiety hides under the surface, and depression slowly seeps in. Indifference works the same way on the soul. It suppresses the natural human response to care. Detachment, however, is not suppression. It is transformation. You feel fully, then you release. You grieve, but you do not cling to grief. You celebrate, but you do not clutch at joy. This movement keeps energy flowing, keeps the mind clear, and keeps the body lighter. Spiritual growth depends on compassion. Without compassion, wisdom becomes dry, like a seed never watered. Detachment nourishes compassion because it removes self-centered desire, leaving room for genuine care. Indifference poisons compassion because it convinces you that caring is weakness. A detached person may give generously and then walk away without expectation. An indifferent person may not give at all, believing that nothing is worth their effort. One opens the heart to humanity, the other closes it. You might see this difference most clearly in relationships. Detachment allows you to love without chaining the other person. You give them space to grow, to leave if they must, and you still wish them well. Your love is not a cage, but a blessing. Indifference pretends not to care whether they stay or go. But this is not freedom, it is disconnection. When you are indifferent, you miss the chance to experience intimacy, because intimacy requires vulnerability, and indifference rejects vulnerability. Think of detachment as the clarity of seeing things as they are. You understand that everything is impermanent. Relationships, possessions, status, even your own body. This understanding frees you from grasping, but it does not make you cold. Instead, it deepens your appreciation. You savor moments because you know they will pass. You treasure people because you know they are not permanent fixtures. Indifference sees the same truth of impermanence, but responds with dismissal. Instead of cherishing, it shrugs and says, "Why bother?" This is not wisdom, it is resignation. The heart of Buddhism is compassion combined with insight. Compassion without wisdom burns out. Wisdom without compassion freezes over. Detachment is where the two meet. You see through illusions, but you also care for the beings still caught in them. You understand that nothing is permanent, but you still hold someone's hand when they cry. You know that desire leads to suffering, but you still smile at a child's joy. Indifference has no such balance. It uses the excuse of wisdom to abandon compassion. Consider how this plays out in society. When you are detached, you can face the world's suffering without drowning in it. You can act with kindness, volunteer, donate, or speak out, but without being consumed by anger or despair. You help because it is right, not because you need recognition. Indifference, however, looks at suffering and says, "It's not my problem." It uses impermanence as an excuse for inaction. This is a misunderstanding of Dharma. True, Dharma does not make you careless. It makes you more alive to the needs of others, even as you release your personal attachments. At the root of the confusion is fear. People fear that if they let go of attachment, they will lose passion, love, and meaning. So they either cling tightly or swing to the other extreme of indifference. But detachment is not the death of passion, it is the birth of pure passion. A detached artist still paints with fire, but without fear of criticism. A detached lover still loves deeply, but without chains. A detached seeker still pursues wisdom, but without pride. This is freedom with warmth, not coldness. The path of detachment also sharpens awareness. When you are indifferent, you close your senses. You numb yourself to avoid discomfort. But numbness dulls everything: pain, joy, beauty, truth. Detachment does the opposite. It heightens your awareness because you are no longer clouded by craving. Food tastes richer when you do not obsess over it. Relationships feel deeper when you do not demand from them. Experiences feel fuller when you do not cling. Indifference narrows your world. Detachment expands it. There is also a moral difference. Indifference can become cruelty because when nothing matters to you, the suffering of others becomes invisible. Detachment never leads to cruelty because it is rooted in wisdom and compassion together. A detached monk may leave the world of possessions behind, but he still feeds the hungry and comforts the sick. His detachment allows him to give more, not less. Indifference does not give it, only withholds. Philosophers throughout history have seen this same distinction in different words. The Stoics spoke about apatheia, the calm state free from destructive emotions. But they never meant apathy in the modern sense. They meant freedom from being ruled by emotion, not freedom from caring. Buddhism echoes this. Detachment is mastery, not neglect. It is choosing how to respond rather than reacting blindly. Indifference is simply not responding at all, not because you are wise, but because you are closed. If you look within yourself honestly, you can feel the difference. When you practice detachment, your heart feels light, open, at ease. There is clarity, a sense of being in harmony with life. When you slip into indifference, there is a heaviness, even if disguised as calm. Something feels deadened, like a light dimmed. That subtle difference is the compass of your growth. Pay attention to it, because it tells you whether you are truly walking the path or just avoiding it. Meditation can help you develop this discernment. In meditation, you learn to observe thoughts and feelings without clinging. You let them come and go, like clouds across the sky. This is detachment in practice, awareness without ownership. Indifference in meditation, however, would be ignoring thoughts, pushing them away, or zoning out. That is not mindfulness, it is avoidance. The quality of presence is what matters. Detachment is presence without grasping. Indifference is absence disguised as calm. Over time, as you deepen in detachment, life becomes lighter. You stop needing constant validation. You stop fearing loss so intensely. You begin to care more authentically because your care is no longer tangled with ego. You help others not because you want something back, but because you see them as yourself. This is compassion in its purest form. Indifference can never reach this point because it cuts off the bridge between self and other. It says, "I am separate, and your suffering is not mine." But detachment sees through separation and responds naturally. The Buddha's life itself is the greatest example. He left the palace not out of indifference to his family, but out of deep compassion for all beings. He cared so much that he was willing to walk away in order to discover the truth that could end suffering. Indifference would have kept him inside, ignoring the world's pain. Detachment gave him the strength to act for the highest good. That is the difference between closing your heart and opening it wider than ever before. So, as you continue on your path, test yourself gently. When you step back from a situation, is it because you are wise enough to release control, or because you are too afraid to feel? When you say you do not care, is it because you have seen through illusion, or because you are hiding from reality? Detachment and indifference may look similar from the outside, but inside they create very different lives. One builds a soul that shines, the other builds a shell that cracks. And here lies the essence. Detachment is love without chains, compassion without ego, freedom without coldness. Indifference is escape disguised as freedom, numbness disguised as peace. If you want to grow, to truly find the calm strength that Buddhism offers, then choose detachment, not indifference. One leads to liberation, the other to a subtle kind of death, long before the body dies. This is the difference the Dharma asks you to see. And once you feel it clearly in your own heart, your journey will never be the same. When you begin to see clearly that detachment is not indifference but freedom, another question naturally rises. If we are not meant to cling or force, then how do we move through life with purpose? This is where many people stumble. They think letting go means doing nothing, or that life will somehow carry them to everything they desire without effort. Others swing to the opposite extreme and believe they must push harder, control every step, and bend destiny to their will. Both are misunderstandings. The middle path is found in understanding karma and the natural rhythm of cause and effect. To live wisely is to act without forcing, to plant seeds without pulling at the stem, to trust that what is meant to blossom will do so in its own season. The law of karma is not punishment or reward handed down by some cosmic judge. It is the simple truth that every action has consequences. Your thoughts, words, and deeds ripple out and return to you in ways you may not expect. When you grasp at outcomes or try to rush destiny, you are not aligning with this rhythm, you are disrupting it. It is like throwing a rock into still water again and again, demanding it clear faster, only to make it murkier. The natural unfolding of karma requires patience, clarity, and trust in timing. The Buddha often compared karma to planting. If you sow seeds of kindness, compassion, and mindfulness, you cannot demand the fruit tomorrow. You must water them, give them sunlight, and allow time to work. Forcing the process does not yield quicker growth, it only damages the seed. This is why rushing destiny breaks the flow. You may achieve something temporarily by pushing, but the fruit will be bitter because it was pulled before it ripened. Detachment allows you to plant without clinging, to act with sincerity, but without obsession. Non-forcing is not passivity, it is wise alignment. When you force outcomes, you act from craving. Craving is rooted in the belief that you must have something now, that life is incomplete until it arrives. This mindset is restless, anxious, always measuring progress. Karma works on deeper levels than your impatience. It carries the energy of intention. If your intention is filled with desperation, fear, or greed, the results will carry that same flavor. This is why forcing often leads to disappointment. The energy you put into the world is the energy that returns to you. Consider how this applies to relationships. You may desire love so intensely that you push yourself into situations not meant for you, trying to hold people who are not aligned with your path. In the moment, it feels like action, like seizing destiny. But the outcome is strain, conflict, heartbreak. When you allow relationships to unfold naturally, guided by compassion and clarity, what arises is more stable. Karma does not deny you love, but it teaches you that love must grow in harmony, not under pressure. Non-forcing does not mean sitting still with folded hands. It means acting with awareness, planting the right seeds, and then stepping back to let life breathe. Think of a farmer. He tills the soil, plants, waters, protects the field, but he does not stand over the crops day and night, demanding they grow faster. He trusts the process. This is the art of karma. You act skillfully, You release control. You trust the unfolding. When you force, you dig up the soil repeatedly, ruining what you planted. The rhythm of karma is subtle. Many times, you cannot see the results of your actions immediately. This is where faith and patience enter. The mind that forces cannot bear waiting, because waiting feels like emptiness. But waiting in alignment with Dharma is not empty, it is fertile. Every moment of patience is nourishment to the seed. When you rush, you uproot your own potential. When you trust, you align with a deeper order. Modern life teaches the opposite. We are told that if we hustle enough, grind endlessly, and never stop pushing, we can control everything. But look at the exhaustion, the anxiety, the disconnection this creates. The law of karma is not impressed by hurry. It responds to the quality of your actions, not the speed of your demand. Forcing outcomes breaks harmony because it comes from ego. The ego does not trust timing. The ego believes it must shape the entire universe. Karma is impartial. It does not bend to ego. It unfolds according to cause and effect, not impatience. There is also a deeper spiritual harm in forcing destiny. It feeds the illusion of control. You begin to believe that your will alone determines reality, that you are separate from the larger flow. Buddhism teaches interdependence. Nothing exists in isolation. Everything arises from countless conditions. Forcing outcomes ignores these conditions, tries to push without harmony. The result is resistance, conflict, and suffering. Non-forcing acknowledges interdependence. It acts wisely within the web of causes, not against it. This does not mean that effort has no place. Right effort is part of the Eightfold Path. But right effort is not frantic pushing. It is balanced, mindful, purposeful. It is like guiding a boat with the current rather than paddling furiously against it. When you force, you exhaust yourself and drift further from shore. When you align, you travel farther with less struggle. This is the secret of non-forcing. Effort guided by wisdom, not by desperation. Think of times in your life when things came naturally, without strain. Perhaps an opportunity appeared when you least expected it, or a friendship grew effortlessly. This is the flow of karma meeting your readiness. Forcing would have blinded you to these openings because you would have been too busy chasing another door. The rhythm of life offers what is right when conditions are ripe. Non-forcing keeps you open to receive. The danger of rushing destiny is also that you often do not know what you are rushing into. The mind imagines that one outcome will bring happiness, but because it clings so tightly, it cannot see the whole picture. You may achieve what you wanted, only to discover it is empty. Karma does not deny you what you chase, but it reveals its true nature once obtained. If you act without wisdom, your forced outcomes become teachers of suffering. When you act with detachment, what unfolds, whether gain or loss, becomes nourishment for awakening. Every spiritual tradition has spoken of timing. In Buddhism, right timing is not about luck, but about harmony of causes and conditions. Forcing ignores timing, like trying to harvest in winter. You may gather something, but it will not sustain you. Non-forcing is trusting that spring will come when it is meant to, and preparing your heart in the meantime. This patience is not weakness, it is strength. It takes more courage to trust than to push. The mind addicted to forcing often confuses action with progress. You may feel you are moving because you are busy, but busyness without alignment leads in circles. Non-forcing may look slower, but it moves in harmony. Like water carving stone, it is steady, natural, unstoppable. Forcing may appear powerful, but it burns quickly. Non-forcing endures. This is why detachment is so crucial. Without detachment, your actions are stained with craving. With detachment, you act from clarity. You still work, create, build, love, but you do not demand instant results. You let karma unfold, knowing that what belongs to you will not pass you by. What is not yours cannot be forced into permanence. This understanding brings peace. Meditation reveals this truth deeply. As you sit, thoughts arise and fade. If you force them to stop, they only grow stronger. If you allow them, they pass naturally. The same law applies to life. Forcing the mind brings resistance. Allowing with awareness brings stillness. Karma is like this. Forcing disturbs the water. Non-forcing lets it clear. Over time, you will see that non-forcing is not laziness, but mastery. It takes wisdom to know when to act, and when to wait, when to push, and when to release. Forcing is easier in the short term because it feeds the illusion of control. Non-forcing requires surrender, patience, and humility. But this humility opens the heart to the deeper order of the universe, where everything arrives in its time. When you stop rushing destiny, life softens. The constant tension in your body relaxes. The anxiety about the future lessens. You begin to notice small blessings you once overlooked because you were too busy forcing. Relationships deepen because you are no longer trying to mold others into your desires. Work feels lighter because you act with clarity rather than desperation. This is the fruit of non-forcing. Karma teaches that every moment is both cause and effect. What you do now shapes tomorrow, but tomorrow also depends on countless other conditions. Forcing denies this complexity. It insists that only your will matters. Non-forcing respects the web of causes. It acts with intention, but it allows space for life to weave its own design. In this space, peace arises. To live in harmony with karma is to see that destiny cannot be rushed, because destiny is not a single fixed event. It is the unfolding of countless causes, shaped by your actions and the actions of others, by conditions beyond your sight. Forcing breaks the flow because it narrows life into one outcome. Non-forcing opens you to infinite outcomes, each carrying its own lesson. When you embrace non-forcing, you begin to see delays not as failures, but as part of the unfolding. You begin to see obstacles not as punishments, but as teachers. You begin to see timing not as against you, but as guiding you. Karma is not in a hurry. It moves at the pace of truth, not of craving. If you align with it, your journey becomes lighter. If you rush, you will always stumble. The wisdom is clear. Act with sincerity, plant seeds of compassion, trust timing, release control. Forcing only creates friction, but non-forcing creates flow. In that flow, life unfolds with more grace than your ego could ever plan. And when you stop rushing destiny, you discover that what is meant for you does not need to be chased. It arrives when the heart is ready to receive. When you learn that forcing life breaks its natural rhythm, another truth quietly shows itself. Much of the pressure we feel to rush, to grasp, to control, comes from desire itself. Desire whispers that without its fulfillment, you are incomplete, that happiness waits just beyond the next achievement, relationship, or possession. Yet if you look closely, every desire, no matter how urgent, no matter how intoxicating, eventually fades. Longing never stays, it always dissolves. To see this clearly is to understand impermanence at the heart of craving, and to free yourself from the endless cycle of suffering it creates. Desire feels permanent when it is burning inside you. In the moment, it convinces you that satisfaction will last forever. You crave a promotion, a new car, a partner, recognition, or even spiritual attainment. You believe that once you achieve it, the longing will disappear and peace will remain. But experience shows otherwise. As soon as the object of desire is gained, the fire begins to cool, and new desires quickly take its place. What seemed so essential yesterday becomes ordinary today. The craving that felt permanent dissolves as naturally as smoke vanishing into the air. The Buddha taught that this cycle arising, burning, dissolving is the nature of all craving. The problem is not that we desire, but that we cling to desire as though it were unchanging. You suffer not because of the object itself, but because you forget impermanence. You mistake a passing wave for a permanent ocean. When you see through this illusion, craving loses much of its power over you. You still experience desires, but you no longer believe they can give lasting happiness. Longing is tied to the illusion of permanence. The mind believes that fulfillment will freeze joy in place. Yet nothing in life remains fixed. Relationships shift, possessions decay, status changes, health fluctuates. Even your own emotions move like weather, never staying for long. When you tie your happiness to desire, you tie it to things that will dissolve. And when they inevitably change, disappointment arises. The recognition of impermanence does not make life bleak. It makes life honest. It frees you from chasing shadows and invites you to savor what is here without grasping. There is also the hidden truth that desire itself is exhausting. Each longing carries weight. It occupies your mind, unsettles your body, drives you into restless action. Think of how much mental space is consumed by craving, how often thoughts circle around if only and what if. When longing dissolves, you feel lighter, freer, as though a burden has lifted. The nature of desire is to appear heavy and urgent, but its essence is vapor. By seeing its impermanence, you stop letting it control you. Modern psychology confirms what the Buddha taught. Studies on hedonic adaptation show that humans quickly return to a baseline of happiness after achieving what they wanted. The joy of a new purchase fades within days or weeks. The excitement of success softens into normal routine. Even deep relationships change in feeling over time. This does not mean achievements and relationships have no value. It means their ability to sustain happiness is limited. The suffering arises when you expect them to provide what they cannot. Recognizing this keeps you from being enslaved by endless craving. Desire is not the enemy. What causes suffering is ignorance of its nature. You can allow desires to arise and dissolve without mistaking them for permanent truths. For example, hunger arises, you eat, and the desire fades. You do not cling to hunger or panic when it ends, but with deeper cravings, wealth, recognition, security, you often forget the same impermanence applies. When you learn to observe longing with the same calm awareness you give to hunger, you see it is just another passing condition. This awareness changes your relationship with time. Desire often projects into the future, pulling you away from the present. You chase a tomorrow that never truly arrives, because once you reach it, new desires have already appeared. When you see that longing dissolves by nature, you stop postponing happiness. You begin to value presence, because you know fulfillment in the future is fragile. This does not make you passive, it makes you wiser in where you place your energy. There is also a subtle beauty in the dissolving of desire. When one craving ends, space opens within you. That space is clarity. It allows stillness, creativity, and compassion to arise. If desire never dissolved, your mind would be perpetually crowded, leaving no room for depth. Impermanence clears the field, so new growth can happen. The problem is not that desires end, but that you resist their ending. You cling to the fire long after the flame is gone, and in that clinging lies suffering. This truth also reframes loss. Often, what you long for is not just gain, but the prevention of loss, keeping youth, keeping security, keeping loved ones close forever. But here too, impermanence rules. Longing for what cannot remain only deepens pain. To see impermanence clearly does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop fighting reality. You can love fully while it lasts, grieve honestly when it changes, and release without bitterness. The dissolving of desire teaches you to value each moment, not as a possession, but as a gift. Meditation reveals this with direct clarity. Sit quietly and watch the mind. Desires appear like waves, a thought of food, a memory of affection, a fantasy of success. Each feels real, urgent, necessary. Yet if you do not feed them, they pass on their own. Some dissolve quickly, others linger, but all eventually fade. This is impermanence in action. You begin to see that craving is not a permanent fire, but a flickering flame. Observing this reduces attachment, because you realize you are not bound to chase every longing. Spiritual practice deepens when you stop identifying with desire. Instead of saying, "I am my craving," you begin to say, "There is craving." This subtle shift breaks the chain of suffering. You no longer see desire as defining who you are, but as a temporary condition moving through you. When longing dissolves, you remain. This recognition is freedom. The nature of desire also teaches humility. Longings are often contradictory. At one moment, you crave solitude. At another, connection. At one moment, you want stability. At another, adventure. If you chase each with equal intensity, you are torn in pieces. Seeing that desires are impermanent helps you resist taking them too seriously. They are winds that blow through the mind, not eternal truths. Humility arises when you realize you do not need to obey every wind. This truth has profound implications for compassion. When you understand that your own cravings dissolve, you see that others are also caught in the same cycle. Their anger, greed, jealousy, or grasping are not fixed identities but temporary conditions. This insight softens judgment and increases patience. You know that just as your longing fades, so will theirs. You respond with kindness instead of harshness, because you see impermanence working in all beings. Non-attachment does not mean rejecting desire completely. It means walking with it wisely. You let longing arise, you see its nature, and you release it when it dissolves. In this way, desire becomes a teacher rather than a master. Each longing shows you impermanence in action. Each dissolution reminds you of freedom. If you cling, you suffer. If you observe, you learn. When you align with this truth, your life changes. You no longer chase endlessly after the next achievement or possession. You engage with the world, but without illusions. You enjoy what you have without demanding it last forever. You work toward goals, but without the desperation of needing them to define you. This balanced relationship with desire is what reduces suffering. It does not eliminate the natural arising of longing. It transforms your response to it. In the end, desire always dissolves, whether fulfilled or unfulfilled. This is its nature. To forget this is to suffer endlessly. To remember this is to taste freedom. The Buddha's teaching of impermanence is not abstract philosophy, it is daily reality. The more you see it, the less you cling. The less you cling, the lighter you walk. And with each longing that dissolves, a deeper peace takes root, a peace that no temporary desire can ever provide. When the truth of impermanence is deeply seen, a new question begins to surface. If desire always dissolves, then why do we keep clinging to what is already fading? The human heart often resists release, even when holding on brings pain. We grasp at relationships, memories, regrets, and expectations, as if our survival depended on them. Yet what we discover through the Dharma is that true healing often begins not in holding tighter, but in letting go. Release is not a loss, it is the space where life renews itself, where the body softens, the mind clears, and the spirit breathes freely again. Holding on feels safe in the moment because it gives the illusion of control. A broken relationship may leave wounds, but clinging to the pain feels like protecting yourself from forgetting. A past mistake may bring guilt, but replaying it again and again feels like proof that you care. Yet this form of holding does not protect it, prolongs the suffering. The wound cannot close because it is never allowed to breathe. When you let go, you do not erase the memory or deny the event. You simply release the need to carry it endlessly. This release is what allows healing to move in. Emotional wounds, like physical ones, need space to recover. If you keep scratching at a cut, it will never heal. In the same way, when you replay betrayals, failures, or grief, you prevent the natural restoration of the heart. Letting go is the act of stepping back, of trusting the natural wisdom of your being to mend. Buddhism teaches that suffering arises from attachment, and nowhere is this clearer than in the refusal to release. The longer you cling, the deeper the pain. The moment you release, the energy shifts. Healing is not forced, it unfolds because you stopped resisting. The body itself reflects this truth. Stress, anxiety, and tension build when the mind refuses to let go. Muscles tighten, breath shortens, sleep becomes restless. Holding on to anger or regret is not only a mental habit, it manifests physically. Countless studies show the link between unresolved emotional burdens and illness. When people learn to release, whether through forgiveness, meditation, or mindful acceptance, the body relaxes, blood pressure lowers, immune function improves, energy returns. The body thrives in letting go, because clinging is a constant fight against reality. Letting go does not mean you forget or dismiss what happened. It means you stop feeding it with resistance. A heartbreak remains part of your story, but it no longer dictates your present. A failure remains in memory, but it no longer defines your identity. Release transforms pain into wisdom. The experience remains, but the suffering softens. Healing arises because you are no longer chained to the wound. The act of holding often comes from fear. You fear that if you let go, you will lose meaning, love, or identity. You believe that your pain keeps you connected to what was lost, but fear binds you to the very thing you long to be free from. Letting go is not abandoning, meaning it is discovering a deeper meaning beyond possession. It is trusting that love does not vanish when you release the person, that wisdom does not vanish when you release the mistake, that strength does not vanish when you release the grief. Forgiveness is one of the clearest forms of release. To forgive is not to excuse or forget, but to stop carrying the poison of resentment. Holding on to anger is like holding a burning coal, hoping it will hurt the other, while only burning yourself. Letting go of resentment allows your heart to heal, even if justice or reconciliation never arrives. This healing is not a gift to the one who hurt you, it is a gift to yourself. Forgiveness is freedom, and freedom is the ground of healing. Letting go also creates space for new growth. When your hands are full of what no longer serves you, you cannot receive what life is offering now. Holding on blocks the flow of renewal. Release opens space. This is why people often discover that once they finally let go of an old attachment, new opportunities, connections, or insights arise. The space left by release is not emptiness, it is fertile ground. Healing thrives in this space because it is uncluttered, open, receptive. Meditation teaches release directly. As you sit, thoughts and emotions arise. When you cling, tension builds. When you push them away, struggle grows. But when you let them pass without attachment, the mind softens. This practice is not only mental, it is healing at every level. The nervous system settles, the heart feels lighter, clarity arises. Meditation is training in the art of release, showing again and again that letting go restores balance more effectively than holding on. The same truth applies to grief. Loss is painful, and healing does not mean pretending otherwise. Yet grief becomes unbearable when you cling to the idea that nothing should have changed. Holding on to what is gone freezes the heart in the past. Letting go honors the impermanence of life. It allows you to love what was while opening to what is. This does not diminish love, it deepens it, because you are no longer resisting reality. Healing grows not by denying the loss, but by releasing the demand for permanence. Even in daily frustrations, letting go heals. A harsh word from a colleague, a traffic delay, a mistake at work, all these can either linger in the mind or be released. When you hold on, irritation festers, affecting your mood and interactions. When you let go, peace returns quickly. Small releases train the heart for larger ones. Each act of letting go is practice in allowing healing instead of prolonging pain. Physical healing mirrors this principle. The body repairs itself when it is given rest, when inflammation is allowed to cool, when tension is released. Similarly, the mind heals when it stops clinging. Just as you cannot force a wound to close faster, you cannot force emotional pain to disappear by clutching it. Both body and mind thrive on spaciousness, trust, and patience. Healing is the natural state when obstruction is removed. Letting go also reveals a hidden strength, resilience. When you release, you learn that you are not defined by what you lost or what hurt you. You discover an inner capacity to move forward, to find meaning beyond circumstances. This resilience is not the denial of pain, but the wisdom of release. It shows you that healing is not the absence of scars, but the ability to live fully with them, unbound by their weight. Release is not passive. It is an active choice to stop fueling suffering. It takes courage, because clinging feels familiar. Yet every act of letting go is an act of trust. Trust that life continues, that the heart can mend, that healing is possible. In Buddhism, this trust is part of the path. The Dharma teaches that everything arises and passes away. When you align with this truth, you no longer fear release. You see it as part of the natural rhythm of existence. Letting go can be seen in nature. Trees release their leaves in autumn, not in despair but in preparation for renewal. Rivers release water to the sea, not in loss but in continuation. The body exhales with every breath, releasing the old to make space for the new. Life itself is a rhythm of release. When you resist this rhythm, suffering deepens. When you join it, healing flows. Ultimately, letting go heals faster than holding on because it removes the friction against reality. Holding is resistance, and resistance consumes energy. Release aligns you with what already is, conserving energy for growth. In that alignment, the body and mind repair themselves naturally. Healing is not something you must create, it is something you uncover once you stop clinging. When you fully embrace this truth, life changes. Old wounds lose their grip. Past regrets no longer weigh you down. Relationships feel lighter because you no longer demand permanence. Even pain becomes a teacher, showing you where release is needed. The heart becomes a place of renewal instead of a storage room for old burdens. The path of healing is not in endless analysis or constant holding. It is in the courage to release. Release the anger, the guilt, the regret, the craving. Release not by denial but by trust. In that release, healing arises faster than you believed possible, because healing was always waiting for space. And when you live this way, you discover that letting go is not a weakness but the deepest medicine, restoring both body and soul with every breath of freedom. When the heart discovers the medicine of release, another truth quietly appears from the silence it leaves behind. What we once clung to so desperately was never just about the thing itself, but about the emptiness it tried to fill. Desires are not random. They carry hidden messages. What you chase outside often reveals what is missing inside. This is why detachment is not simply a practice of letting go of cravings, but also a way of looking deeper, of seeing clearly what longing is trying to cover up. Beneath every pursuit lies a mirror, and in that mirror you can see your wounds, your fears, your forgotten parts of self. Every desire carries with it a story. The pursuit of wealth may not be about money itself, but about the hunger for security, the wish to never feel vulnerable again. The chase for recognition is not just about status, but about the craving to be seen, to be valued, to be enough. The longing for romance is not only about connection, but often about filling an inner loneliness that has been there for years. To see desire in this way is to understand that the object of the craving is secondary. What it points to within you is the true lesson. Without this insight, you chase endlessly, believing the object will complete you. With this insight, you begin to heal the root emptiness rather than feeding it with endless substitutions. Detachment gives you the distance to see this clearly. When you are entangled in craving, the story it tells feels absolute. If I only had this, then I would be whole. But detachment steps back and reveals another perspective. This desire is showing me where I still feel incomplete. Instead of blindly following the craving, you can learn from it. Each longing becomes a teacher. What you lack reveals itself through what you chase. The practice, then, is not to shame yourself for having desire, but to look at it honestly, as a mirror reflecting your inner state. This mirror of emptiness explains why fulfilled desires rarely bring lasting peace. If the underlying emptiness is not healed, even when you gain what you want, the hunger remains. It may quiet for a moment, but soon another craving arises to take its place. Without understanding, you spend your life decorating the surface of emptiness rather than tending to its depth. Detachment breaks this cycle because it reminds you that no external object can resolve an internal wound. Healing comes not from adding more, but from addressing the emptiness directly. The Buddha taught that craving arises from ignorance, from not seeing clearly. We believe that the world outside can fix what feels broken inside. But when you see through the illusion, craving becomes a doorway into deeper wisdom. Ask yourself, what is this longing trying to cover? What wound is it pointing toward? What fear is hidden beneath this chase? When you inquire in this way, desire transforms from a chain into a guide. It no longer controls you. It shows you where to look. This insight changes how you relate to yourself. Instead of condemning your desires as weaknesses, you approach them as signals. A desire for endless approval might point to a forgotten wound of neglect. A craving for constant busyness may point to a fear of facing emptiness in stillness. A need to control others might reveal insecurity within. Detachment gives you the space to look without judgment, to see these patterns not as flaws, but as invitations to heal. What makes this teaching profound is that emptiness is not a failure. In Buddhism, emptiness is also the truth of all things, that nothing has a fixed, independent essence. The emptiness revealed by desire is not a sign that you are broken, but a reminder of your impermanent, fluid nature. You chase because you forget this. You believe you are missing a permanent peace. But in reality, you are not missing what you feel, as emptiness is the absence of attachment, waiting to be filled not by objects, but by wisdom and compassion. The practice of turning desire into a mirror requires honesty. When a craving arises, instead of rushing to fulfill it, you pause and ask, "What is this showing me about myself?" For example, the longing for luxury may reveal a fear of insignificance. The hunger for endless knowledge may reveal insecurity about worth. The pursuit of beauty may reveal discomfort with vulnerability. Each desire opens a window into your hidden places. When you view them with detachment, you can meet those places with awareness rather than feeding them blindly. This perspective also brings compassion for others. When you see that your cravings reveal your emptiness, you recognize the same truth in others. The person chasing wealth may not be greedy, but deeply insecure. The one obsessed with attention may not be vain, but longing to be loved. The one clinging to possessions may not be selfish, but terrified of loss. Recognizing this softens judgment. Instead of resenting others for their desires, you see the suffering beneath. Compassion arises naturally because you understand that all beings are chasing what they think will heal them. Healing the emptiness revealed by desire requires patience and courage. It is easier to chase external objects than to face inner wounds. The craving distracts you, gives you temporary relief, and lets you avoid discomfort. But when you stop and turn inward, you encounter the raw emptiness itself. At first it feels painful, but within that emptiness is the seed of freedom. By sitting with it, by not running, you discover that it cannot destroy you. It softens, it opens, it reveals space where peace can grow. Meditation is the laboratory for this practice. As you watch the stream of thoughts, desires arise, cravings for comfort, for distraction, for recognition. Instead of indulging or rejecting them, you observe. With time, you begin to notice the deeper patterns. You see the fears behind the cravings, the insecurities behind the stories. This is how meditation transforms desire into a mirror. It slows the process enough for you to see clearly what is usually hidden beneath action. There is also a profound freedom in realizing that emptiness does not need to be filled. The mind believes that emptiness is a problem, a hole that must be covered. But emptiness, when seen without fear, is spaciousness. It is openness. It is the ground where peace rests. The chasing ends not because you have filled the emptiness, but because you see that nothing was missing. This is the highest form of detachment, to rest in emptiness without needing to escape it. This truth is reflected in daily life. Think of the times when you stopped chasing for a moment and allowed yourself simply to be walking quietly, sitting in silence, sharing presence without demand. In those moments, emptiness felt whole. No craving needed to be satisfied. This is not the emptiness of lack, but the emptiness of freedom. What you thought you lacked was only the illusion created by craving. By learning to use desire as a mirror, you turn suffering into a path of growth. Every craving becomes an invitation, not to rush outward, but to look inward. Each longing points to a place where compassion is needed. Each pursuit reflects where you still hold wounds. When you meet those wounds with awareness, they begin to heal. The chase loses its power because the inner lack is cared for. What once felt like emptiness now becomes clarity. When this way of seeing deepens, life feels lighter. You no longer exhaust yourself running after illusions. You no longer measure your worth by what you gain or lose. You no longer fear emptiness because you see it as the natural ground of being. The chasing slows, the heart softens, and you begin to live with more presence, more compassion, more truth. The mirror of emptiness is not a threat, it is a gift. It reveals where healing is needed and shows you the futility of chasing shadows. When you stop fearing what the mirror shows, you discover that emptiness is not a hole to be filled, but a space to be embraced. From that space arises wisdom, compassion, and peace. And once you learn this, desire no longer rules you. Instead, it becomes a teacher, guiding you back to the freedom that was always within. When you begin to see that desire is only a mirror for inner emptiness, the question naturally shifts toward action. If chasing creates suffering and clinging reveals wounds, how then should one live in the world? The answer does not lie in withdrawal or apathy, but in learning the art of effortless alignment. Taoist philosophy calls this Wu Wei, often translated as non-doing. It is not about inactivity, but about living in such deep harmony with the flow of life that actions arise naturally, without strain, without forcing, and without resistance. Within Buddhism, this principle resonates through detachment, patience, and the wisdom of the middle way. Wu Wei often confuses people because the words non-doing sound like laziness or indifference, but it is nothing of the sort. It is the opposite of struggle. It is the experience of being so attuned to reality that your choices are not made from craving, fear, or control, but from clarity and trust. It is when you act without resistance to what is, and in doing so, your actions carry a kind of ease that forced effort can never achieve. Buddhism echoes this through its teachings on right effort that is balanced, wise, and free of attachment to results. When you live in alignment, life does not feel like a constant battle. You still act, work, and make choices, but they flow more naturally. There is no pushing against the current, no grasping at outcomes. This kind of action has a quiet power. It allows results to arise in their proper time without being distorted by impatience. Detachment in Buddhism creates the mental space for this state, because once you are free from clinging, you no longer act from desperation. Wu Wei is action without forcing, detachment in motion. In Taoism, the sage is compared to water. Water flows without resistance, finds its way around obstacles, and nourishes everything it touches without struggle. In Buddhism, this same principle is seen in patience and compassion. The Buddha taught that forcing against the truth of impermanence brings suffering, while acceptance allows peace. Wu Wei reflects this same wisdom. When you align with the natural rhythm, life carries you forward effortlessly. The strain disappears because the resistance has been released. In daily life, this principle shows itself clearly. Think of the times you pushed relentlessly for something, only to exhaust yourself with frustration. Contrast this with the times when you allowed things to unfold while staying attentive and responsive. The results often came more smoothly, with less struggle, and in ways you could not have predicted. This is Wu Wei in practice, acting when it is time, resting when it is not, and trusting the timing of life. Buddhism calls this patience, not as passive waiting but as wisdom that knows all things ripen when conditions are ready. Wu Wei is also about clarity of intention. When you act from craving, your choices are clouded, restless, and distorted. When you act from alignment, your mind is clear. You respond rather than react. In meditation, this can be felt directly. When you try to force the mind into silence, it resists. But when you sit with gentle awareness, silence comes naturally. The stillness arises not by control but by release. This is the art of effortless alignment. Silence is not forced but allowed. This principle also connects to compassion. When you act with force, even if your intention is good, your action carries strain. You may try to fix others, control outcomes, or impose your vision of what is right. But when compassion flows effortlessly, it does not demand or manipulate. It meets suffering with presence and responds with care that is natural, not calculated. This is why Buddhist detachment enhances compassion. Once you let go of clinging, your kindness no longer seeks reward. Wu Wei is compassion without agenda, pure responsiveness to the needs of the moment. One of the greatest difficulties in human life is the constant belief that we must control everything. Wu Wei dissolves this illusion. It reminds you that life is interconnected, that outcomes depend on countless causes beyond your control. When you stop forcing, you leave space for these conditions to align naturally. Buddhism teaches dependent origination, that everything arises due to conditions. Wu Wei is the practical expression of this, aligning with conditions rather than fighting them. This does not mean passivity. To live in Wu Wei is to be deeply engaged, but without the arrogance of control. The farmer plants seeds, waters the soil, tends the crops, but does not demand the harvest arrive tomorrow. The healer gives medicine, but trusts the body's own wisdom to recover. The teacher shares knowledge, but allows the student's readiness to shape their learning. This is effortless alignment, acting wisely, without clinging to immediate results. Buddhism describes this as skillful means, knowing how and when to act in harmony with causes and conditions. Wu Wei also reveals itself in creativity. Artists often describe moments when their work flows effortlessly, as though it is creating itself through them. Athletes speak of being in the zone, where movement happens without conscious struggle. These states are glimpses of effortless alignment. They arise not from control, but from surrender to the moment. Buddhism supports this through mindfulness. Being fully present allows action to flow with ease, without distraction or resistance. The power of Wu Wei lies in its subtlety. Forced effort often leads to burnout, while effortless alignment is sustainable. It conserves energy because you are no longer fighting reality. You move with it, not against it. This is why patience is so important in Buddhism. It is the willingness to let things unfold in their own rhythm, knowing that rushing only creates tension. Wu Wei is patience in motion, the dance of stillness and action combined. Living this way also transforms relationships. Forcing others to meet your expectations creates conflict. Aligning with their nature allows harmony. This does not mean tolerating harm, but responding without the burden of control. You let people be who they are while acting wisely in response. Detachment prevents you from demanding, and Wu Wei allows your presence to bring peace rather than pressure. Relationships built on effortless alignment feel lighter, freer, more authentic. Another dimension of Wu Wei is trust. It asks you to trust the flow of life, to believe that what needs to unfold will unfold. This trust is not blind faith, but an understanding of impermanence and karma. You act skillfully, you plant good seeds, and then you release the outcome. Wu Wei is this release, the confidence that you do not need to pull at the stem to make it grow. Buddhism calls this trust in Dharma, the law of truth that carries life forward, whether or not you cling. The practice of Wu Wei also helps dissolve fear. Much of human anxiety arises from trying to control what cannot be controlled. When you accept the rhythm of life, fear lessens. You act when it is time, you rest when it is not, and you trust that what is yours cannot be lost. This calmness is not indifference, but deep alignment. Fear loses its grip because you are no longer fighting time, no longer demanding permanence. In meditation, the principle becomes even clearer. Breath flows naturally. If you try to force it, it becomes uneven and strained. When you let it be, it deepens on its own. Thoughts arise and fade. If you try to suppress them, they multiply. If you allow them, they dissolve. This is the art of non-doing in direct experience. Wu Wei is not about abandoning discipline, but about finding the discipline of ease, effort, that does not feel like struggle. Ultimately, effortless alignment is the natural state of being when attachment is released. Forcing comes from craving and ignorance. Non-doing arises from wisdom and trust. Buddhism and Taoism meet here. Both teach that peace comes not from conquest, but from harmony. Not from control, but from alignment. Wu Wei is the living expression of detachment. It is what happens when the mind no longer grasps, when the heart no longer fears, when action arises from stillness. When you live in this way, life feels lighter. Work does not exhaust you. Relationships carry less conflict. The mind settles into presence. Healing flows more naturally. Opportunities arise without strain. You begin to see that life was never meant to be wrestled into submission. It was meant to be met with clarity and trust. Effortless alignment is not something extraordinary. It is the natural state uncovered when craving ends. This is the quiet power of Wu Wei in the Buddhist context. Not the absence of action, but the presence of harmony. Not laziness, but wisdom. Not indifference, but patience. It is the art of letting life carry you without resistance, while still planting seeds of compassion and acting with care. It is the balance of effort and ease, the union of silence and motion. And once you learn to walk in this way, the struggle fades, leaving space for peace to flow through every step. When life begins to feel lighter through effortless alignment, another burden quietly reveals itself, the unseen weight of expectations. Unlike possessions, which can be put down or given away, expectations cling to the mind and press on the heart. They are invisible contracts we write with the world, with others, and with ourselves, often without realizing it. And yet they weigh more than any physical object, because they bind us to disappointment, frustration, and restlessness. If attachments tie us to things, expectations tie us to illusions, and those illusions block the natural unfolding of life. Expectations feel natural because they grow silently from desire. You expect others to treat you the way you treat them. You expect success to come after effort, love to follow kindness, happiness to arrive after sacrifice. These expectations sound reasonable, but the world does not operate by personal contracts. Life unfolds according to countless causes and conditions beyond your control. When expectation meets reality, conflict arises. The heavier the expectation, the deeper the wound when it is unmet. Unlike possessions, which you can release with practice, expectations live inside your assumptions. They bend perception and bind you to suffering without you even noticing. The Buddha spoke often of craving and clinging as the root of suffering, but within craving lies expectation. The moment you desire something, your mind begins to predict how it should arrive, when it should appear, and what it should look like. This prediction hardens into expectation. When life delivers something different, disappointment follows. What you suffer from is not always the event itself, but the gap between expectation and reality. A harsh word hurts less by itself than by how much it shatters the expectation of kindness. A delay in progress feels heavier, not because of the delay, but because it did not match the expectation of speed. This weight is heavier than attachments to possessions, because possessions are external. You can see them, you can feel them, you can choose to part with them. Expectations are internal and often unconscious. They shape how you see every moment, They dictate how you interpret experiences. They become the lens through which you judge yourself and others. To carry expectations is to carry an invisible cage wherever you go. The bars are not made of objects, but of assumptions about how life should be. One of the most subtle forms of expectation is self-expectation. You expect yourself to be stronger, wiser, more successful, less flawed. These inner demands drive constant dissatisfaction. Even when you achieve something, the mind immediately raises the bar. No achievement ever feels enough, because expectation shifts like the horizon. It recedes as you approach. This inner weight is exhausting, and it robs you of peace. Detachment teaches you to release possessions, but the deeper practice is to release expectations of yourself. Only then can you experience the freedom of simply being. Expectations of others are equally heavy. You expect your partner to love you in a certain way, your friends to understand without explanation, your children to fulfill your hopes, your colleagues to respect your efforts. Each expectation builds a silent condition for your happiness. When others fail to meet it, resentment grows. Yet often, they never agreed to these terms. They are living their own causes and conditions, just as you are. To demand that they match your script is to fight reality. Letting go of these expectations does not mean tolerating harm or neglect. It means releasing the burden of demanding that others fulfill roles they may never have chosen. In that release, relationships breathe. Expectations of life itself are the broadest and heaviest. You expect that good deeds will always be rewarded, that justice will always prevail, that the path will always be smooth. These are noble hopes, but when taken as guarantees, they create despair when life does not comply. The Dharma teaches impermanence and uncertainty as universal truths. To live as though life owes you guarantees is to deny these truths. Acceptance is not cynicism, it is the wisdom that sees life clearly. Without the burden of expectation, you can meet each moment as it is, not as you demand it to be. The greatest weight of expectation lies in its subtlety. You may think you are detached because you own little, live simply, and practice release. Yet if your mind is full of assumptions about how life should unfold, you are still bound. Attachments are visible chains, expectations are hidden ones. They block natural arrival because they do not allow you to see what life is actually offering. You overlook opportunities, blessings, and lessons because they do not match your imagined script. You wait for one door to open while ignoring the many already before you. This does not mean you should live without intention. Intention guides effort. Expectation clings to results. Intention says, "I will act with kindness." Expectation says, "Others will treat me kindly in return." Intention is within your control. Expectation depends on forces beyond you. The key to freedom is to keep intention alive while releasing expectation. You walk the path with sincerity, but without demanding a specific outcome. This balance allows life to flow naturally. Meditation reveals the nature of expectation clearly. As you sit, thoughts arise not only of craving but of how things should be. The mind should be still by now. My practice should be deeper. I should feel peace. These expectations create frustration, but when you release them, you notice that presence itself is enough. Peace does not come from fulfilling the expectation of silence. It comes from dropping the expectation altogether. This lesson in meditation extends to all of life. Freedom lies not in perfecting the moment, but in releasing the demand that it be perfect. Expectations are also heavy because they multiply suffering. Pain in itself is sharp but simple. Expectation adds layers. This should not have happened. I deserved better. Things must be different. These thoughts add weight to the raw experience. Letting go of expectation lightens pain. Suffering reduces to its natural size. The sting of disappointment softens when you stop demanding that life meet your script. You learn to meet reality directly, without the extra weight of should. The release of expectation also deepens gratitude. When you expect nothing, everything becomes a gift. The smallest kindness feels precious. The simplest moment feels full. Gratitude blossoms not because life gives more, but because the mind stops demanding more. The heart sees clearly what is already here. This clarity is the opposite of entitlement. It allows joy to arise from the ordinary because the ordinary is no longer measured against impossible standards. This principle extends to spiritual practice itself. Many seekers become trapped by expectations of progress, expectations of enlightenment, of constant peace, of endless joy. When these do not arrive as imagined, doubt and discouragement grow. But the Dharma unfolds in its own rhythm. Progress cannot be forced, and wisdom does not always appear in the form you expect. Releasing these hidden expectations allows the path to open naturally. You learn to value presence over progress, sincerity over milestones. In doing so, growth unfolds more authentically. Letting go of expectation is not abandonment of hope or effort. It is the cultivation of humility before reality. You act with clarity, you live with compassion, but you do not bind yourself with demands about how life must respond. This humility frees you from bitterness when things do not go your way. It also frees you from arrogance when they do. Life becomes less about controlling outcomes and more about participating fully in the unfolding. The weight of expectation also affects how we see the future. Constant expectation pulls you out of the present and ties you to a horizon that never arrives. You wait for happiness tomorrow, for fulfillment later, for life to begin when conditions are met. But tomorrow is always beyond reach. The present is the only place life can be lived. Releasing expectation anchors you here, where peace is possible. When you begin to loosen the grip of expectation, you may feel lighter immediately, as though a load you did not know you carried has been lifted. This is because expectations operate silently in the background, shaping perception without your awareness. Releasing them is like removing a weight from your shoulders that you thought was part of your body. Suddenly, the mind has space, the heart has ease. Life feels less like a burden and more like a gift. This practice is lifelong. Expectations will arise because the mind is conditioned to predict and assume. But with awareness, you can meet them gently. You can notice, this is expectation, not reality. And in that noticing, the weight begins to dissolve. Each release creates more freedom, more peace, more space for life to arrive naturally. The hidden weight of expectation is heavier than possessions because it cannot be put down by will alone. It must be seen clearly, understood deeply, and released with practice. But once released, the freedom is profound. You discover that life flows more gently without constant demands, that joy is brighter without constant conditions, and that peace is nearer when you stop waiting for it to come in the form you expect. In this way, releasing expectation is not loss, but liberation. The opening of the heart to reality as it is, unbound and free. When the hidden burden of expectations begins to dissolve, what naturally takes its place is a new quality of being patience. Without the constant pull of things must happen now, the heart has space to rest in trust. But patience in the Buddhist path is far more than waiting quietly for time to pass. It is an active strength, a conscious trust in the unfolding of Dharma, and a deliberate choice not to be shaken by delay, discomfort, or hardship. Patience is not passivity. It is power that arises from understanding reality as it truly is. The Sanskrit word khanti, often translated as patience, is one of the 6 perfections practiced by bodhisattvas. It carries meanings that go deeper than the modern sense of endurance. It speaks of forbearance, tolerance, resilience, and a radical willingness to meet the world as it arrives without collapsing into anger or despair. It is not about gritting teeth until something changes. It is about opening fully to what is, with the steady confidence that life unfolds according to causes and conditions, not according to craving. Patience is difficult because the mind resists reality. It wants things to move at its own pace, in its own way. When that does not happen, agitation rises. This is why patience is called a perfection, because to truly practice it is to transcend the ordinary reactions of the mind. In anger, you believe life is unfair. In impatience, you believe you are entitled to a different moment than the one in front of you. Patience dismantles these illusions by showing you that things take the time they need. To meet them with trust instead of resentment is to live in harmony with truth. Patience is not weakness. It is not surrender to oppression or indifference to injustice. It is strength precisely because it gives you clarity in the midst of difficulty. Anger clouds judgment, and fear narrows vision, but patience holds steady, allowing you to respond wisely. When faced with insult, patience keeps you from striking back in a way that multiplies suffering. When faced with hardship, patience keeps you from abandoning the path in despair. This is why kshanti is considered essential to liberation. Without it, every obstacle would send you spiraling into reaction. In relationships, patience is the difference between peace and conflict. The expectation that others should always meet your needs, change quickly, or understand perfectly creates endless friction. Patience recognizes that people grow at their own pace, shaped by their own conditions. It allows you to support without forcing, to love without demanding. This patience does not mean tolerating harm or abuse. It means responding from wisdom rather than from reactive anger. In its highest form, it allows you to meet even hostility with compassion, seeing that those who cause harm are themselves caught in suffering. Patience also transforms how you relate to time. Much suffering comes from rushing life, from demanding that growth, healing, or success arrive on your schedule. But growth has its rhythm. Seeds sprout when conditions are ready, not when you demand. The same is true of spiritual progress. Enlightenment is not a prize you can seize by effort alone. It is the unfolding of understanding when the mind has been cultivated properly. Patience allows you to keep practicing with sincerity without demanding results. This steady devotion is more powerful than restless striving. The Buddha himself emphasized patience as the greatest ascetic practice. While others sought liberation through extreme deprivation, he saw that the ability to remain steady in the face of pain, insult, and delay was the true test of strength. To sit calmly when insulted, to endure hardship without hatred, to walk steadily when the path is long, this is the perfection of kshanti. It is easy to appear strong in moments of triumph, but patience is the quiet strength that sustains you through every season, not just the favorable ones. Patience is also an expression of wisdom. To be patient is to recognize that all things are impermanent. Anger flares, then fades. Suffering rises, then passes. The storm never lasts forever. Knowing this, you can meet difficulty without despair, because you trust its transient nature. You no longer fight to escape every discomfort immediately. You rest in the knowledge that time itself carries change. This trust turns what feels unbearable into something manageable. It does not eliminate pain, but it prevents pain from turning into suffering. In meditation, patience is the foundation. The restless mind wants stillness instantly. The practitioner expects calm in minutes. When this does not arrive, frustration grows. But the practice itself is patience, returning again and again to the breath, the moment, the awareness, without judgment. Progress unfolds slowly, often invisibly, like water wearing away stone. Without patience, meditation collapses into struggle. With patience, the mind opens like a flower in its own time. Patience is also required for forgiveness. To release anger toward those who hurt you is not an overnight act. The wound may be deep, the trust broken. Forgiveness cannot be forced, but it can be nurtured with patience. Each time anger arises, you meet it without feeding it. Each time resentment returns, you observe it without judgment. Over time, the grip loosens. Patience allows wounds to heal at the pace they need, without rushing, without clinging. In this way, patience is compassion applied inward as much as outward. Spiritual patience is not about sitting still while waiting for life to improve. It is about active trust that your efforts matter, that wisdom ripens slowly, that even setbacks are part of the path. It is the courage to continue planting seeds, even when you cannot see the harvest. It is the humility to accept that you are not in charge of timing. This humility softens the ego, because impatience is always ego demanding its way. Patience surrenders the ego's timetable and bows to the rhythm of Dharma. There is also patience with yourself. Too often, the hardest expectations are directed inward. You want to be calm immediately, wise immediately, free of flaws immediately. But human growth is uneven, marked by progress and regression. Patience with yourself is the willingness to keep walking without condemnation, to meet your own imperfections with understanding. This patience prevents the spiral of guilt and self-criticism that blocks growth. It allows you to see yourself as a work in progress, worthy of compassion at every stage. Patience also expands perspective. When you are impatient, the mind narrows to the immediate discomfort. Patience widens vision, reminding you of the bigger picture. You see that difficulties are temporary, that growth requires time, that truth is not revealed all at once. This broader vision brings peace because it reduces the urgency of every moment. You no longer demand instant resolution. You see the value of process. The perfection of patience is not easy. It requires practice in small things as well as large. Each moment of irritation is an opportunity to cultivate it. Waiting in line, facing delays, enduring criticism, all become practice grounds. Instead of reacting with anger, you can breathe, observe, and let the feeling pass. Each act of patience strengthens the mind. Over time, it becomes natural. What once agitated you deeply no longer disturbs you. This is not repression, it is mastery. In society, patience is often undervalued. Speed, productivity, and immediate results are glorified. But spiritual patience offers a deeper success. It builds resilience, peace, and clarity. It allows communities to resolve conflict without escalating violence, to endure hardship without despair, to pursue justice without hatred. A world with more patience is a world with less suffering. Ultimately, spiritual patience is the expression of trust in Dharma. It is the recognition that life unfolds according to truth, not according to personal demand. It is the strength to walk the path steadily, without rushing, without forcing, without despair. It is the gentle but unshakable power that allows the heart to remain open, even in the face of difficulty. To cultivate this perfection is to discover that patience is not waiting for life. It is living fully within it, with trust, with steadiness, and with peace. When the mind learns patience and begins to trust the slow unfolding of the Dharma, another trap reveals itself. One that pulls us away from both patience and presence, the endless grip of what if. These two words are deceptively small, but they carry immense weight. They drag the heart into alternate realities where you replay the past or imagine futures that never come. They create whole worlds of illusion that feel real but exist only in thought. The freedom you long for cannot be found in these phantom landscapes. It can only be discovered here, in the immediacy of this moment, where life is actually lived. The mind drifts easily into what if. You replay mistakes and say, what if I had chosen differently? You rehearse lost opportunities and whisper, what if I had tried harder? You cling to regret and build alternate versions of your life where everything turned out better. Or you project into the future, worrying, what if I fail? What if I lose? What if things go wrong? Each of these thoughts creates a parallel reality, but none of them exist. They bind you to illusions while robbing you of the only reality that does exist, the present. The Buddha described this as part of the wandering nature of the mind. Instead of resting in awareness, the mind travels to past and future, constructing narratives that fuel craving and suffering. When you are caught in what if, you are never free. Regret ties you to what cannot be changed. Fear ties you to what has not yet arrived, and both prevent you from experiencing the peace available right now. Freedom arises when you see these alternate realities for what they are, shadows, not truth, and return to presence. Regret is one of the most painful forms of what if. It convinces you that happiness was lost forever because of a wrong choice or missed chance. Yet regret is based on the illusion that life could have unfolded differently than it did. In reality, each moment arises from countless causes and conditions far beyond your control. To believe it could have been otherwise is to deny the law of dependent origination. Life could not have unfolded any other way because it was the precise outcome of everything that came before. Seeing this does not remove responsibility for your actions, but it releases the false belief that clinging to regret can change the past. Regret dissolves when you understand that the only meaningful choice is the one you make now. Fear is another face of what if. It projects disasters that may never occur, chaining you to anxieties about the future. Fearful what-ifs drain your energy, keeping you from acting with clarity in the present. They magnify uncertainty into catastrophe, yet the future is as empty of fixed reality as the past. It is not yet born. To live in constant fear of what might happen is to live in a dream of suffering. The practice of mindfulness cuts through this illusion. When you anchor yourself in breath, in body, in awareness, you see that the feared outcome is not here. The present is always manageable. It is only the imagined future that feels unbearable. The prison of what if is strengthened by comparison. You look at others and think, what if my life were like theirs? You measure your path against their success, beauty, or happiness, and create alternate stories where you are different. But comparison is based on fragments, not truth. You see only parts of another's life and project your own story onto it. The reality you construct is not real, it is a reflection of longing. When you recognize this, you free yourself from envy. You stop measuring your worth against illusions and return to the reality of your own path. The Buddha taught that clinging to thoughts of past and future is a form of suffering because it denies impermanence. The past is gone, dissolved like a dream upon waking. The future is unborn, uncertain, beyond grasp. Only the present breath, the present step, the present awareness is real. To free yourself from what if is to awaken from the dream of illusion and live where life is truly happening. This does not mean ignoring past lessons or refusing to plan for the future. It means learning from the past without being chained to it and preparing for the future without being consumed by it. Healing from what if requires courage because the mind is addicted to its stories. It takes effort to see them as stories rather than truths. Each time regret or fear arises, the practice is to pause and ask, is this real now, or is it only thought? By naming it, you weaken its grip. By returning to the present, you reclaim your freedom. Over time, the mind learns to rest more often in awareness, less often in illusion. Compassion plays a role here as well. Much of the suffering from what if arises from harshness toward yourself. What if I had been better, smarter, stronger? Compassion answers, you did what you could with the understanding you had. Life unfolded as it did. The lesson now is to forgive yourself, to hold the past with gentleness rather than punishment. Compassion allows you to release the chains of regret and use your energy for growth instead of self-condemnation. Letting go of what if also deepens relationships. Many conflicts persist because people replay the past. What if you had treated me differently? What if I had spoken differently? These rehearsals prevent true reconciliation. By releasing alternate versions of the past, you open to the reality of the present connection. You meet the person before you as they are now, not as they were in your imagined stories. This openness creates space for healing and understanding. Meditation is a direct path to freedom from what if. When you sit, the mind will wander to alternate realities. Instead of fighting, you observe, there is regret, there is fear. You return to the breath, to the body, to presence. Slowly, you train the mind to distinguish between reality and illusion. Over time, the wandering lessens. The mind tastes the peace of resting in what is. Each moment of presence is liberation from countless what-ifs. Life becomes lighter when you stop carrying these alternate realities. You no longer replay endless scenes of the past. You no longer rehearse disasters of the future. You live with clarity, responding to each moment as it comes. Energy once trapped in illusion becomes available for creativity, kindness, and joy. The freedom beyond what if is not a distant goal. It is the simplicity of being here, unchained by shadows. Ultimately, the Dharma shows that what if is only another form of craving. It craves a different past, a different future, a different self. But craving is always unsatisfied because it clings to what cannot be. Detachment dissolves this craving by showing that life is enough as it is, imperfect, impermanent, but real. When you release what if, you do not lose possibility, you gain freedom. You step out of the endless maze of alternate realities and into the living truth of this moment. This freedom is the essence of awakening. It is not found in correcting the past or securing the future, but in letting go of illusions altogether. When the chain of what if falls away, you discover that you were never lacking, never incomplete. You were only distracted by shadows. In presence, there is peace, clarity, and liberation. And in that freedom, the heart rests in the only place it was ever meant to be here. When the mind learns to step beyond the illusions of what if, it begins to see another mystery of life more clearly, the paradox of release. So often, the things you cling to most tightly slip further away, while the things you surrender return in ways you could not have planned. Letting go does not mean abandoning care or losing value. It means allowing space for natural return. The paradox is that release carries its own gravity. When you stop grasping, what is meant for you often circles back, lighter, freer, transformed. Clinging pushes things away because it suffocates. When you hold a person, an opportunity, or even an idea too tightly, the energy becomes heavy, filled with fear and desperation. That energy creates resistance. People feel it as pressure, situations feel it as force, and life itself seems to respond by keeping distance. Release shifts the energy. Instead of clutching, you open your hand. This openness does not repel, it invites. It creates a field where what belongs to you can return without being forced. This is why letting go attracts. It is not about magical thinking, but about alignment with truth. When you let go, you stop acting from fear of loss. You stop projecting desperation into every interaction. You no longer distort reality with constant demand. In that stillness, others feel safe around you. Opportunities flow more easily toward you. Life responds because you are no longer pushing. The very act of non-grasping creates a kind of natural magnetism. Relationships offer the clearest example. When love is clung to, it becomes burdened with control, expectation, and fear. The more you try to hold someone, the more they feel trapped. Release allows love to breathe. When you love freely, without chains, people feel respected and valued. Paradoxically, this freedom often deepens the bond. Some who leave even return, not because you chased them, but because your openness created space for them to rediscover their own choice. What comes back through release is not forced affection, but genuine connection. This principle applies beyond relationships. Think of opportunities. When you chase endlessly after a certain outcome, you may force decisions, push doors, and exhaust yourself, often with little success. But when you let go, acting with sincerity but without desperate attachment, you create space for unexpected possibilities. Sometimes, the very opportunity you thought was lost reappears, reshaped in a way that fits better than before. Letting go does not kill possibility. It clears the path for alignment. The Buddha taught that craving creates suffering, but he also taught that non-attachment brings freedom. What is often missed is that this freedom does not repel life's goodness, it draws it more deeply. Non-attachment is not indifference, it is the ability to hold life with open hands. When the mind no longer chases, it no longer distorts reality. Life then meets you in its natural rhythm. What is meant for you can arrive without obstruction. Psychology mirrors this truth. In attachment theory, anxious clinging creates instability in relationships, while secure detachment fosters closeness. In energy psychology, desperation is experienced as repelling, while calm presence feels safe and attractive. Letting go shifts your energy from fear to trust. Others sense this shift, even if unconsciously. Life itself reflects it, because your actions are no longer driven by panic, but by clarity. Letting go is not giving up effort. You still plant seeds, take steps, and live fully, but you release the demand that results arrive exactly as you imagine. This surrender opens doors you could not have forced. Many people discover that once they stop obsessing over a goal, progress happens naturally. The job call arrives after they release worry. The creative idea flows when they stop forcing. The healing begins when they stop demanding instant recovery. Release clears the block. There is also a deeper wisdom in this paradox. Often what you cling to is not ready for you, or you are not ready for it. Clinging tries to force timing. Release allows both sides to grow. When things return after letting go, they often return transformed. The relationship that once suffocated becomes healthier. The opportunity that once seemed lost appears in a better form. The dream that once felt impossible arises with clearer direction. What returns through release is not the same as what you let go. It is refined by time and alignment. This principle connects to karma. Forcing interferes with the natural unfolding of cause and effect. Release allows karma to ripen at its own pace. When you let go, you trust that if conditions are right, what is meant will return. If it does not return, you understand it was never yours to hold. Either way, peace is found. The paradox is that release increases the chance of return because it aligns with the natural law instead of fighting against it. The practice of letting go also transforms your inner state. Clinging keeps you restless, constantly measuring, fearing, controlling. Release brings calm, which itself is attractive. Calmness draws people and situations because it feels like safety in a chaotic world. Your energy shifts from contraction to openness, and openness always invites more than grasping. In meditation, this is clear. When you cling to silence, the mind becomes noisy. When you let go and simply observe, silence arises naturally. When you chase peace, agitation grows. When you release, peace comes on its own. This mirrors life itself. What you force resists. What you release finds its way back in its own time. Letting go also reveals what truly belongs to you. Not everything you release will return, and that is part of the wisdom. Some things fall away because they were never aligned with your path. When you cling, you cannot see this clearly. When you release, you allow the test of reality. What stays away was never yours, and what returns is meant. In this way, release not only attracts but also clarifies. It shows you the difference between attachment and genuine alignment. The paradox of attraction through release does not mean waiting passively. It means living actively, fully, and sincerely, while not binding your heart with fear. You continue to love, to create, to work, but you stop gripping the outcome. You let life move in its rhythm. You discover that release is not emptiness, it is trust. And in that trust, life often brings back more than you expected. This truth also deepens gratitude. When something returns after being released, it feels like a gift rather than an entitlement. You no longer take it for granted. You value it more deeply because you know it could have remained gone. Release turns return into blessing. Clinging turns return into obligation. This shift transforms how you hold the people and opportunities in your life. Ultimately, the paradox of letting go is not about manipulating outcomes, but about aligning with reality. You cannot control return, but you can free yourself from suffering. And in freeing yourself, you create the openness through which return becomes possible. Letting go attracts not by force, but by resonance. What resonates with your true path comes back, not as a possession, but as a natural part of your unfolding. The wisdom is simple but profound. Release does not mean loss. It means trust. And in that trust, life has space to bring back what is truly yours, not through grasping, but through alignment. What you let go of may return transformed, or it may not return at all. Either way, you are free. And that freedom itself is the greatest gift, because in freedom, everything you need arrives when it is meant to. When you begin to understand that letting go allows what is meant for you to return naturally, another truth rises quietly from this wisdom, the truth of timing. So much suffering comes not only from clinging but from believing life is running ahead of you or passing you by. The fear of being too late, the pressure of being too early, the panic of missing your chance, these anxieties weigh more heavily than the actual events. Yet the Dharma teaches that timing is never wrong. Nothing that belongs to your path arrives too late, and nothing that is not meant to stay can be forced to come early. The Buddhist view on timing dissolves the myth of missed opportunities and replaces it with trust in the unfolding of conditions. The Pali phrase kalena dhammasaka cha refers to discussing or practicing the Dharma at the right time. Its meaning goes far beyond conversation. It reflects the understanding that life unfolds in rhythms. To act out of alignment with those rhythms creates struggle, but to act in harmony with them brings peace. Timing in Buddhism is not about luck or chance. It is about the ripening of conditions. When causes and conditions align, results appear. When they do not, forcing only creates suffering. This perspective dissolves anxiety because it reminds you that what has not arrived is not late. It is simply unripe. The obsession